breaking news from Paris. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, has named François Bayrou as the country's next Prime Minister. The announcement follows the collapse of the government last week. Mr. Macron was under pressure to select a leader who can satisfy the demands of a broad coalition and pass a budget for next year. France has been in political turmoil since the president called a snap parliamentary election in July. Let's go live to Paris and speak to our correspondent, Hugh Schofield. Hello to you, Hugh. So I suppose the obvious question is, can Mr. Bayrou solve the problems that Michel Barnier had?
That is the question, and the betting must be on the answer no, because nothing's changed. The arithmetic's the same. He's chosen Macron, another man from his camp, from the centre. Barnier was from the centre-right. Now we've got Bayrou, a very, very experienced politician, but very much from the centre, from the Macronite section of Parliament. And his task, obviously, is going to be to try to reach out to bits on the right, bits on the left, to see if he can cobble together either an informal coalition or de facto groups of people who vote for him to get legislation through. But I don't see why anything has particularly changed. The same sort of promising-ish beginning was there for Barnier. Everyone pronounced goodwill and said, well, we'll see how he does. But then when it came to the first test of a government, which was, in his case, to bring up to table a budget, in other words, a programme of decisions on money, it all came down. And I don't see why that should be any different. There's plenty of goodwill towards Bayrou. I mean, everyone respects him. He's been around for 40, 50 years, and he's a man in the middle of French politics, so he doesn't automatically anger one side or the other. But I can't see why his predicament is going to be any more favourable than Barnier's, to be honest with you.
Because, of course, the far right and the hard left in French politics want one of their camp to be the next prime minister. But do you see this as President Macron trying to up the ante with those on the far right and the hard left, saying to them, look, if you don't agree to this prime minister, if you don't work with this prime minister, then the public are going to hold you responsible for the failure to pass a budget, for example?
Well, I mean, that may be what he's calculating. I mean, I think everyone sees that there is a need to get a budget through soon. I mean, the country will continue. There's going to be emergency legislation pushed through now that will allow the 2024 budget to sort of tick over month by month into next year. So, things will go on. But everybody knows that, that's a recipe for inertia and complete stasis if there isn't a government that's prepared to institute reforms, take the country in a given direction. Right now, there is no direction, there is no government, and the frightening prospect is there of a period lying ahead of us where nothing is done except just the ticking over of business, taxes collected and debts raised on the markets, and nothing else happens, which of course is going to be an appalling prospect for a country which faces so many problems. And as for the question of whether Macron thinks that he's putting pressure on the extremes or the far right and the far left to sort of come on board because otherwise the country will fall apart and they'll get the blame, I'm not sure that argument works. Madame Le Pen was blamed by Parisians last week for bringing down the government and being irresponsible in their views, but the polls show that she's gone up even further. Outside of Paris, no one has been looking on this at all because they're just completely bemused by the politicians in Paris.
OK, Hugh, thank you very much. For the moment, that's Hugh Schofield in Paris.